All right, folks, here we go on this Thursday. Chilly out, but sunny. Yep. There's Debbie. There's everyone. We'll slowly start to file in. Happy Thursday, one and all. Weather forecast. Again, at least it's sunny out. And then tomorrow and Saturday starts to warm up, but it's going to be chilly at night. Without question, as we are in real fall October weather. So we're going to be joined by attorney Stephanie Murphy coming up just a couple moments. Yep. And no one, what's this? To me, the effects of the ice in Providence last night, we saw it firsthand with Road Patrol Live. There's Lynn Miller. Hi there, Bill. Can't wait for snow. Good God. Don't even mention that word. Well, some people are excited about it. Not all. Not all is for sure. So, yes, there's Bill. Yep. Henry B. So hilarious. There's Jane Rice. We're going to be starting in just 4 minutes. How is it possible? No, it's possible. 4 minutes. Folks, how about it really is remarkable. Not one elected official, not one, has come forward and said, hey, what is all this talk in Providence that, you have both the mayor of Providence and then that David Morales, who's running for mayor, who put out a video yesterday saying, oh, and, ICE is not welcome in our city. I don't know what I'm missing here. What am I missing? What I don't understand, first of all, the number of ICE agents that I know. So right now we're live. We're going to start in 3 minutes. We're live on YouTube. They are. You're right, Janet Dwyer. I don't know. For some reason, I don't have that problem. But you know what I don't understand? There's Jessica Perry. Yes, definitely need socks with your white Crocs in this weather. There's Mary. Wasn't the one I meant. There's Jessica Perry. Yes. Folks, remember, you can also send stars during our 1 to 2. We're going to start in just 3 minutes. 3 minutes. Let me make sure that all is well with our radio partners. I believe it should be. It all should be fine, but we never know. Yep. There we go. We do never know. Here we go. Okay. Help them out a little. Oh. Do this. And we'll go there. Okay. And we're live. All right. We're going to start in just 2 minutes. 2 minutes. What I wanted to say, I should say, is a number of the many of the ICE agents that I know, they're former military. Some of them are retired police. I'm telling you, for the life of me, I don't understand this notion that these people, and in Providence tonight, I don't think it's going to go through, but it's still frightening that Providence City Council, they're going to have a hearing, and this whole business of you should be able to sue the Providence police, and you should be able to, all these things that they want to limit law enforcement. I don't think it's going to happen. And these different provisions that if you were to help, if a police officer were to help an ICE agent, then they could face lawsuit. Like I can't believe what we're living in. But what no one touches on, and I'll talk about it in a minute. But just the nature of what are we talking about? For instance, the South American theft ring that the Cranston police, thank you, Debbie, that the Cranston police, that they arrested those guys that were casing the different houses. And two of them had been deported out of the country. Oh, good. And they snuck back into the country. So, all right, folks, we're going to begin at 1:06. Good afternoon, one and all, on this sunny but cool Thursday. Yes, you can listen right now. We are live on AM 1380 and 99.9 FM. Now, you can always listen online at our website, depetro.com. Right now at 1:06 on this Thursday, October 16th, you can also, we are live. You can watch and listen, obviously, on X, our platform on X, also on Facebook and also on YouTube. Now, you can always just listen to the radio. And I hear from so many of you that do listen to the radio. But you can always, it's a different experience, interact with other individuals that are listening and watching our program. And this portion of the program, folks, not a week goes by that someone reaches out to me, and it's always, and that's fine, but it's always, asking for a friend or a coworker, or I don't know who it is, but people never know when they may be in need of an attorney. And that's why we offer the services of Marin, Barrett, and Murphy, criminal defense attorneys, 50 years combined Rhode Island criminal defense experience. Remember, your fight becomes their fight, and they put the full weight of the firm behind every case. You can call them. Free consultation. It's interesting. There's so many different myths that we break up. I do hear from people that say, well, now how much, if I call and, my son's in trouble, how much? I say, listen, it's a free maybe you need some legal representation. Maybe you don't, but you could call them. No, 401-228-8271. Marin, Barrett, and Murphy. I do admit, many times people ask things, they're things that I never think about, such as this woman reached out and said her son is in trouble. Who's that woman that I have on? I like that. Hey, at least they're watching. Who's the woman? Stephanie. Now, if my son talks to her, we talk to her, is she going to hang up and then call the police? I said, no. Who told you that? Well, my brother-in-law said they do that. No, they don't do that. No. Attorney-client privilege, madam. Call them, 401-228-8271. Stop listening to your brother-in-law. No, it doesn't work that way. No, and as I said, you never know when you're going to need. There's people waking up today that don't know that this is the day that suddenly, or over the weekend, and various things happen like that, where then you do need legal guidance. So, folks, to me, the poster child, before we bring on Stephanie, is that situation in Rehoboth. Greg Groom went in, no attorney with the Rehoboth police and the Massachusetts State Police. Granted, driven by the sister of the missing person. And, that had a happy ending. However, just know he completely would have been within his right if he said, I want an attorney with me when I'm going to answer some questions. Again, I'm not defending. Sometimes people misunderstand that. I'm not defending. You have that right. He had that right. That's a different one. Boy, that's really on the tightrope with no net. Think of that. Now we have learned he confessed, but think of that. You kill the girlfriend. She's buried on your property, which we highlighted. He didn't drive. You go to the Rehoboth police station, no attorney, and walk in to answer questions. That is definitely a different one. All right, let me do that. Let me do that. Hold on. Okay, there we go. Let's bring her on. And it is our legal expert, attorney Stephanie Murphy. Stephanie, I'm not poking fun, but you got to admit that is that is definitely on the high wire, no net, actually even blindfolded. We have since learned her remains were found buried on his property, strolls into the Rehoboth Police Department, no attorney to sit down with the Massachusetts State Police detectives.
I mean, even if you do nothing wrong, you have no wrongdoing in anything that they're asking you about, go in with an attorney because you never know the path that's going to go down. And what I tell all my clients is by the point you're coming into the police department, the police or the federal agents or an investigator, they know so much more than you think they know. So you have to assume they're only telling you a little bit to get you in, and they have all this evidence, and anything you say that goes against anything they have, they got you right then and there. Even if you don't think they know, or did their homework, they absolutely did. So just go in with an attorney. I'll call the police department and say, hey, my client wants to come in and talk. I am the one that's stating that I need to be there. My client's freely going in, wants to, and I'm telling my client that I need to be there. So I become the bad person, not the client.
I like television references. Breaking Bad has there's that great scene. Michael Ehrlentraut, who works for Gus Fring, he's brought in, and Hank and his partner are questioning him, and he says, Hank, the police officer, actually DEA, says, "You strike me as a police officer. Were you a police officer?" And then, during the course of the conversation, we learned not only did they know he was a police officer, they checked where Michael had been a police officer in Philadelphia. So to me, that's a good example. And he said, I'm willing to bet you've already checked. So I think that's a good example. I have one. I do have a question, though, Stephanie. I'm just curious if you have been in a situation that you've been with a client. And again, it could be they did nothing wrong, but where the police are asking a question that if you weren't there, you had someone who was ready to answer. Like, is there a classic example of that?
Yeah, I think I've had several instances where I have a client in the room with me and I know the client's all set to go. And I'm the one that has to say, oh, officer or agent, can I have a moment with my client before we go down this road? And then I get a moment with my client. Then I can then go out and speak to the agents and not be on the record and kind of tell them what's going on. Sometimes it's as simple as, they're about to implicate somebody else in their family, anything like that. And I can say, hey, let's break for a moment. I need a moment with my client. And then I can go have an off the record conversation with the police or the agents and kind of tell them what's going on and why I'm apprehensive about moving forward. If I'm there, I can also call off any further questions. A lot of times a client in that situation, if they're not there with an attorney, they are so worried about saying those words, I want to speak to an attorney, and they don't. And I can't tell you how many cases I've had that I've gone to trial on that I'm trying to suppress a statement that my client made to the police because my clients were scared to say, I want an attorney.
Just one more question on that. And do you notice a difference? Oh, people should know. Police will act differently if there's an attorney present compared to there's someone that's just sitting there, one or two people alone, and then they are, firing questions.
Of course. So I get the opportunity to see, statements being given that are recorded without me there. And then I know what happens when I'm at the stations, and they are completely different. I'm not saying the cops are doing anything wrong, but what they say, how they act, what they do. I do notice that I don't see the same things when I'm there in person that I do on video or audio recorded statements without an attorney there. So even if you're not going to, hire that attorney for, the full case, if you get charged, it's just good to have an attorney there. And if you're being investigated for a criminal case, get a criminal attorney to be there. A lot of people will bring their family probate attorney or, the wills and trust attorney. I would definitely recommend, calling an attorney who knows, what interrogation is, what a statement is. It's great to have an attorney there, and it's probably better than nothing. But at the same time, I would never go and to partake in some sort of discussions in the civil world, but, I'm happy to be there on a criminal investigation.
Yeah, I heard a story from with law enforcement where they said there was someone who potentially was in a lot of trouble, potentially in a lot of trouble, and he comes strolling in very confident, and he's got a real estate attorney. Someone had done closings, and even the police were like, "Listen, this is someone who needs a criminal defense. You need a criminal defense attorney, not someone that's going to make sure and do the closing." Stephanie, let's talk about some of the stories that are in the news. Starting with that was an unusual situation where ICE apparently was trying to pursue someone in Providence, and they go through the red light. They're trying to pursue someone, and then they crash into the car and they take down a pole. And number one, you had the effects of that, and then number two, all of these public officials, specifically the mayor, saying once again, police, we do not cooperate. Our police do not cooperate with ICE. I'm just curious some of your thoughts on that. That was a pretty high profile case with ICE in the city of Providence.
I mean, I think if you take the political stuff all aside and stuff like that, is whether or not, the agents had the lights on, the notification. I mean, it's a car accident. A pole fell in the car. I'm not sure about the injuries. But, for something like this, you kind of had to take the politics aside and look at, what was going on, who's at fault. Most likely it's just a civil case, an accident and everything like that. It doesn't have to, it doesn't have to be the biggest case, in the city that day, but it was an accident and needs to be investigated. And agents and police officers, just like, people driving on the road, there's certain rules that have to be followed, especially law enforcement in terms of running lights and stuff like that. There's a way to do it safely. And I think that needs to be investigated, but that would be investigated whether it was a local police department or ICE agents and stuff like that. The investigation would really kind of be the same, and the police need to investigate, or the insurance companies need to get involved and kind of come to a conclusion of what happened. But it was a very, elevated story due to the tensions and everything going on with immigration issues.
Now, Stephanie, our next story, a lot of people want to be on television. Stardom sounds very attractive until something happens. And we're continuing to learn about this situation with the Real Housewives of Rhode Island. One of the husband of one of the potential contestants, the headline, and it's actually Channel 10, the news leader who's really leading the coverage on this story, but the husband tracked her. What stands out to you in this story?
Well, just like you were saying, John, if this wasn't about a TV show in Rhode Island, this person wouldn't be on the front page of, any news story. But because of the publicity with the show and everything like that, it's becoming a big ordeal. But I mean, these charges are, probably handed out every day. There's people in court for these charges and stuff like that. But in terms of tracking devices and stuff like that, they're typically not legal in Rhode Island. And it does result to, some charges, whether it's stalking, cyber stalking. There's all these different regulations and laws where you could get charged with and have to, fight in court and stuff like that. But from the story, it seems to be an ongoing issue that's kind of happened in the past. And the husband made a disclosure that he knew exactly where she was. And that statement and that disclosure is kind of what got him to hot water in this case. But it's a minor crime, but a serious crime. And I think the publicity is just coming from the heightened, scrutiny of the TV show.
Agreed. If they were not part of that, I don't think they certainly don't get this type of attention.
Absolutely.
Could you also just clarify, is this something you run into, domestic situation? One partner wants to either track another partner, film another partner, whatever it may be. What are the legalities in Rhode Island?
Yeah. So, I mean, a lot of times, sometimes with people, with financial means, will hire a private investigator and stuff like that. There's a way to kind of get information legally. There's discovery processes through family court. There's ways to get things through the court system. If you wanted text messages, subpoena phone records, credit card statements, cash withdrawals. So through a divorce process or in family court, there's a way to subpoena that information legally. Then there's also private investigators who can kind of get that information. And then there's people just going out on their own and kind of crossing the legal line in terms of getting that information. But there is discovery processes through criminal cases, family court cases, divorce cases that you can request that information and, file motions to compel in order to get that information the legal way.
And Stephanie, before we get to Murphy's Law, I did get an email from, I think it was Kevin, and I think it happened in Connecticut, but it might have been Massachusetts. But anyhow, he sent an email saying he was driving, I'm pretty sure it was Connecticut, and he ran into a checkpoint. and he was thrown by it because we don't have them in Rhode Island, and was looking for legal guidance. What should someone do? I will sometimes see in Massachusetts, they'll post, coming up this Friday night, they're going to have checkpoint at a certain town. I believe Connecticut does do them, but what are the Rhode Island? We don't have them. What are what legal advice would you give someone if they get caught in one of these checkpoints?
So I'm licensed in Connecticut and Massachusetts, and I know Connecticut does have DUI checkpoints where you kind of have to drive through and stuff like that. That's allowed under their law. In Rhode Island, it's not. In Rhode Island, you have to have, reasonable suspicion to stop a vehicle, have a reason to interact with the vehicle. In Connecticut, there's certain situations, when laid out correctly, that there's checkpoints that are on major roads or intersections that, you pull up, you have to roll down your window, have a conversation before you're allowed to go through. So I guess my legal advice is, if you get charged after that, you can try to suppress, different information that they received, try to have a constitutional argument in terms of the suppression and the search point and stuff like that. But they are legal in Connecticut. So it's a lot different than if, a local police department in Rhode Island kind of set up an officer, just checking for that, is a lot different and stuff like that. Some states who don't allow a checkpoint, I've had cases where, a cop is on a detail for a construction site and, stops and talks to the car. And then the car gets, the officer tells them to pull over, and they do a whole alcohol investigation. So that's not a checkpoint, but that's somewhere where you're interacting. So there's always some legal arguments that you can make. Each state is different. So if there is a checkpoint in a state, I would definitely try to abide by the law and not say much. Not answer many questions. If you have, some drinks and you're worried you could be there, don't say anything incriminating and stuff like that. And also make sure that your passengers are ruly, not unruly, because you don't want the cop investigating the passengers and leading to investigation for you. So I would take the checkpoints pretty seriously, approach them, avoid them, do whatever you can. But they are legal in Connecticut and certain states.
Yeah, and the fact that we don't have them in Rhode Island, doesn't make you exempt. So if someone's in Connecticut, they can't say, "Officer, mistake here. I'm from Rhode Island. We don't have these checkpoints, so that doesn't apply." It applies to any driver that happened to be on that road at that time.
It does. Just like when you drive through any state, you have to abide by their laws and their rules. Even though you live in Rhode Island, you can't say, "Oh, Rhode Island doesn't have that rule," or the speed limit in Rhode Island's 65. It doesn't matter. You have to apply the laws and the rules of the state and the town you're in.
Yeah, it's not a get out of jail free card. Folks, it's time for Murphy's Law. This is a story that attorney Stephanie Murphy has come across that she finds interesting. And what do you have for us this week, Stephanie?
So it's not so much of a story, but in terms of expungements and motions to seal in Rhode Island, last July, there was a new law that was passed that for DUI cases, there's a 10-year look back instead of the 5-year look back that Rhode Island had. So what we're seeing a lot and getting a lot of phone calls are, what if I had a DUI from, let's say, 2021? When I pled to that DUI, I was under the impression it was only a 5-year look back, and I was eligible to get it expunged in 2026. What repercussions of that new law will have, if I get another DUI, or if I want to get my other ones expunged. So I think just reaching out to an attorney, if you have a prior DUI, prior to them changing the expungement law, would be a really good idea to try to get prior offenses off your record. And I see all the time that somebody calls me that they get arrested for a new charge, and I take a look at their, record on the judiciary website, and there's a couple things that would have been eligible to get off, expunged, or sealed, but because now they have a new crime charge, they're not really eligible at that moment to get it off. So it's just more of an announcement for people listening in terms of, get old charges off your record as soon as you can, whether it's a motion to seal, a motion to expunge. There's changes, I think, coming in January to some of the expungement laws. So it's just a good time, if you have an old charge that you want to get off, go ahead and file the appropriate paperwork or contact an attorney.
Folks, again, she is our legal expert, attorney Stephanie Murphy. Stephanie, keep up great work. Great to talk to you. We'll talk to you again.
Thanks, Sean. Have a good day. Bye.
All right, folks, there we go. And that is attorney Stephanie Murphy. Well, good afternoon. It is, a lot of talk And I'm going to touch on that. Just a reminder, Marin, Barrett, and Murphy, 401-228-8271. Now, also, let me mention PR Landscape Materials and Garden Center. They are available. Yes. PR Landscape Materials and Garden Center, they're open. They're having a fantastic season. Everything is fall. And I haven't noticed last night that someone had a display. It looked nice. I hadn't seen it before, but lit up on their front lawn. And it was very tasteful. It wasn't, some people do kind of frightening Halloween scene or something. It was nothing like that. But you can find everything at PR Landscape Materials and Garden Center, where they have pumpkins, straw bales, cornstalks, gourds, Indian corn, native vegetables. Their homegrown mums and kale are just outstanding. They're open 7 days a week. Gift certificates are available. It's PR Landscape Materials and Garden Center. Stop in and see them. And again, what I like, they grind it. Family-run business. Support local business. And they grind it 7 days a week. You can depend. And they also run a great Facebook page. It's PR Landscape Materials and Garden Center. Well, folks, obviously, I was speaking with a friend of mine, Michael, and he was saying how everyone in his office now, every day, they're checking the website, depetro.com. And I said, I understand why. And thank you, by the way. But don't forget depetro.com, which is brought to you by the Coesit Inn, 226 Coesit Avenue, West Warwick. Remember what we say, lunch, dinner, drinks in the lounge. They're waiting for you at the Coesit Inn. They have a great, the menu is always changing, and you're going to love it. It's the Coesit Inn. And don't forget, they can also handle a large group. Not everybody can handle a large group the way the Coesit Inn can. So, and what do I mean by that? I mean, a lot of times, maybe you're going to have 10 or 12 people. Not every restaurant, and certainly not the course of, the day that people could handle a big group like that. But the Coesit Inn could. And that's why I mention it's perfect for the collation lunch, the Coesit Inn. 226 Coesit Avenue, West Warwick. Remember, lunch, dinner, drinks in the lounge. They are waiting for you at the Coesit Inn. I will touch on, because I mentioned it yesterday, and what I'm talking about has to do with the reaction that a number of high profile, started with Mayor Smiley. Then you have that David Morales, who's running to be the mayor of Providence. And I played yesterday. He actually even has a video out. The Providence Journal, the Boston Globe, they have a big story about, this group is so fantastic. And they're organizing to alert people about ICE. And by the way, the person who is the person behind this, I know exactly who the person is, because the individual that's involved as the leader of this was also leading all the anti-Israel protests. It's the same individual who was totally organizing pro-Hamas demonstrations. And so there's a big story about this group. What I don't like about it is, to me, it kind of glorifies what they're doing. And what they're doing is interfering with law enforcement. I want to just, where is the ICE vehicle ran red light without its siren on before Providence crash report says. That's not the one. Federal court. Nope, that's not it. It's when ICE agents come to Rhode Island, the Deportation Defense Network answers the call for help. They even had the leader of this, Maya Lara, and he is transgender, a transgender male. So he's a male, but goes by the name of Maya. And it definitely is a flattering post. And folks, what gets me about this, what gets me about it is I don't understand, and no one will explain why are we celebrating people that are trying to interfere with the agents that, and I see some of the comments, innocent until proven guilty. Think about what happened in Cranston, and think about the fact that they are from South. See the passive aggressive tone that people, oh, that's not what it is, and how do you know that? Like, it's always the same thing. And those were individuals. Of the 3 arrested, 2 had been previously deported, and then they snuck back into the country. And as I mentioned, so you have the mayor of Providence saying, I want everybody to understand, our police don't cooperate with ICE. And you have that David Morales, who's running for mayor, and Enrique Sanchez, who's a state rep, and that's Sam Bell, Senator Sam Bell. And you don't hear anyone coming forth and saying, why aren't the police working with them? Maybe if the police were working with them, you wouldn't have had that type of traffic accident. And, you have people, I'm so glad now that Meta, Facebook, they took down a group. There was a Facebook group, where they were identifying ICE agents, who they are, where they live, who their family members are, where the family members work, photos of their children. How is that not a form of domestic terrorism? The ICE agents that I know, half of them, at least half, are former military. And many of them are former police. Not all, but a lot of them are former police, but half of them are former military that are jumping in on this. And so I want you to just look at the Providence situation. And as I mentioned, I'm going to go off just some of the comments of, you know what I can't stand? It's such a lazy comment. Oh, you're a racist if you're in favor of ICE. Oh, I saw it on TikTok. Oh, you're a bigot. So let's step back for a moment. You have someone. Yeah, they're kidnapping brave neighbors. They're kidnapping my neighbors. Let's just step back for a moment. You have someone who commits a homicide in Guatemala. They flee the country. They come to the United States. Rhode Island has one of the largest Guatemalan populations in the country. Rhode Island has one of the largest Guatemalan populations outside of Guatemala. So this person who committed a homicide in Guatemala is now hiding in Providence, the sanctuary state. These officials, they learn where he is. Some of the people, well, they didn't have to go through the light, and, they're putting people in danger. Do you know how difficult it is to try to find and track someone who is not a resident of our country? If the police wanted to go after, as an example, Henry B. Chafee, okay, where did he live? Yeah, forcing the law is now considered racist. When they're going after someone, they may say, I'm just going to, John Smith. John Smith grew up in Woonsocket, and they know John Smith had worked here, and his sister worked there, and maybe he lived at one point in North Smithfield, and maybe then, he for a time he lived in Bellingham. My point is, they have they know where the family is, they know where he had worked. They could go to people, family members, where he is. Have you seen him? They could surveillance around where the parents live, where sibling lives, maybe an ex-girlfriend. When you have someone from another country, they literally, and I don't say this often, but they could be anywhere. That is needle in the haystack. So I've spoken with ICE agents and say, that's why when we get a lead on where someone is, we've got to move. Because who knew they couldn't have. But when I have problem is these people that, I mentioned last night, people say things that it never even occurs in my mind of, for instance, one woman posted a comment. Well, they broke the law by going through that red light. It never occurred to me that as someone that deals with first responders all the time, as someone that rides with first, we with the police, we're going to a scene. We have the lights and the siren on. We're slowly going through red lights. It never occurred to me that there's someone sitting there saying, look at that. They just broke the law and went through a red light. Like, what are you talking about? This woman, well, the ICE agents broke the law when they went through the red light. When I see a fire engine, right, a fire truck barreling to a fire, and they slow down and they go through the red light, it never enters my mind, well, they just broke the law. No. They're not breaking the law. Like, I didn't even think people think that. What is wrong with you? Like, so there are people out there, when they see police that are going to a scene, and they normally, they slow down to make sure, but they have the lights and siren go through red light. It never occurred to me that there's some people saying, look at that, they just broke the law by going through that red light. No, they're not breaking so what would you rather have? You have the murderer from Guatemala who's saying, I need to hide in a sanctuary place. And then, his cousin, whoever, Manuel, says, well, Providence is pretty good. A lot of Guatemalans. All right, I'll hide out there. They're looking for me for murder or for whatever. These people basically say the ICE agents going through the red light, trying to capture a murderer, that they're the danger, not the murderer. As one woman put on my TikTok video, well, he wasn't committing a murder at that exact moment. Again, I've never heard of that. So now, if you don't catch somebody in the act, hey, he may have killed someone in Guatemala, but that was last week. He's right now off Chuckstone Avenue. He's not killing anyone. Well, he wasn't killing anyone at that exact moment. Boy, that's a new way to enforce the law, right? Like, that's the old game of tag, where then there's a home base where you're safe. Oh, so if you don't catch the person while they're doing it, hey, too bad, finders keepers. Well, he may have robbed a bank, but you didn't catch him while he was robbing the bank. He robbed the bank yesterday. Like, what a rationale. By the way, I'm not saying it is a good rationale. That is true. That is true about that. Now, I'll say this, then there has to be a process. There should be a process where those businesses say, we're going to sponsor that worker and we're going to be held accountable for that worker. But as of right now, unless I missed it, I haven't even seen the Rhode Island Republican Party issue a statement supporting ICE with this. See, to me, that is a nonsensical, ridiculous argument, such as, well, they're a danger to the society. That guy that got off Hartford Avenue, he was a fentanyl dealer. He snuck into the country. I think he'd been deported before. They get a lead on where he is. And yet you still have these people. See, to me, that's why the media should highlight what a ridiculous, nonsensical argument that is. As people like Enrique Sanchez and that David Morales and Justin Royce and some of these others. Oh, they took our neighbor, Ivan. Neighbor. He's an illegal that snuck in who is pumping out fentanyl in and around Providence, killing people. Oh no, he's our neighbor. It's just, but my point is, the local media, they totally give them a free pass. Folks, I want to talk to you about Propane Plus. Check them out online. I'll tell you, they're available 24/7. That was another question I got. What if I go on their website at midnight? No, the website, is it still functioning? Yeah, their website goes 24/7. You could be on at 12 noon, 12 midnight, 3 in the morning, 3 in the afternoon. No, Propane Plus, propaneplus.com, residential and commercial. Is the website on at night? Yes. Yes, the website is on at night, as a matter of fact. Even weekends, holidays. I never realized people think that. Are there some people under the impression websites shut down at like 6 o'clock at night? No, no. Propane Plus. Call them 401-885-4209, Massachusetts 508-252-3359 for Propane Plus. I did a video about the situation with ICE, and I stand by what I said. I'll admit, I don't, like a lot of other people, I don't like the covering the face. I admit that, that some of that, if you have followed the way Putin has operated in the past, when they have gone into certain countries to try to get certain territories, I know, like in Georgia, they all of a sudden there are soldiers there, but they don't have identifying badges. Suddenly there's just soldiers showing up somewhere. No one knows exactly who they are, and they don't announce who they're part of. And it would turn out that they were with the Soviet Union. Now, I don't like it into that. And obviously, whoever was maneuvering, I'm sure they wish they could have that back. But what's the alternative? I also want to mention, and again, granted, I know I'm going off some of the comments that I see that were made on social media, but this business of, hey, this guy, the guy they're after, innocent until proven guilty, that's for an American citizen. That's for an American citizen. The people that they're going after are criminals who have, bail, skipped court appearances. There's warrants for their arrest. They will be in a court of law. But this business of kidnapping people, it's all made up. It's all lies. And I think what I don't understand is that, the local media, they don't even explore that. Let's look at the alternative. Think wherever you may live, you find out that someone that's living down the street is wanted for some involvement with 2 homicides in, pick a country, El Salvador. Do you just say, "Oh no, that's my neighbor"? No, I think it'd be a fair question of why wouldn't the police be going to get that person? Let's say it's anyone. Let's say you found out that there's someone on your street who's wanted for a homicide in New Hampshire, who's hiding there, who's wanted for a homicide or serious crime of some kind in New York or New Jersey. So that's okay for the police to go and remove that person. But again, they're going to be inside of a court of law. They'll have a chance to make their case, blah, blah, blah. But no one can rationally explain. It would be very, very reasonable if you learned there was someone living on your street. Suddenly some guy shows up and he's somebody's cousin. And then you find out, oh, wow, he's wanted for murder in New Jersey. So it would be a good citizen to contact the police and say, there's a man that showed up last week down the street, and I can see online, I'm pretty sure it's the same guy. They're looking for him in New Jersey. That would be a good citizen. That's not being a snitch. And then, the sheriff's office, fugitive task force, whoever, they would go. Probably officials from New Jersey would come up here if they can identify if that is the person, to then go get them. So, to me, of course you would do that. But why would you not do that for someone that just happens to be there hiding out from another country? Suddenly, if it's from another country, it's hateful. Oh no, that's racist. No, wrong one. How is that racist? I'll admit, I don't understand. Maybe I do understand. Maybe that's part of the problem. As I have talked about, whether it is David Morales, when I'm there, where people should not be surprised when then they talk about money. It's all the same. It's all the same. We tragically may witness what happens when a socialist gets put in charge. And if this Mandami becomes the mayor of New York City, first of all, how about he's talking about taxes would be up to 52%. So even if you have a good paying job, and when I lived 9 years in New York City, in Manhattan, and you have people on Wall Street that make, they work long hours, they're smart, they make 1 million a year. I knew people that made more than that. Young guys. I used to play in a basketball league that were all Wall Street guys, bonus time. They were all getting huge bonuses. But it just reaches a peak where you'd be living now where you only keep 48% of what you make. The candidate that's running for understands that his rationale is that, if you pay at 2%, then it's going to be a better quality of life for everyone. It isn't. And you're seeing that in Providence, and in Rhode Island, I should say, where they're building, Crossroads announced new housing. And much like the Foxy Village near the Foxy Lady, none of those none of those people moving into apartments. That is their new apartment. They try to sell it to us as if it's temporary housing. It's not temporary housing. And at some point, what happens when the people that the government and the city are keeping 52% of their earnings? What happens when those people start to move away? Who's going to take care of all of that? Folks, this portion of the program is brought to you by Watson Materials. Call them for a free quote, 401-885-0600. Landscape lighting, pavers, retaining walls, natural stone, cobblestone, decorative stone. Watson Materials, 401-885-0600. Call Sean, free quote. The most complete selection of landscape materials in Rhode Island is Watson Materials. Landscape lighting, pavers, retaining walls, natural stone, cobblestone. Watson Materials, 401-885-0600. Well, number one, I think a lot of people would start to move to New Jersey, but just to use New York. But the reason I mention that is because this David Morales, who's running to be the next mayor of Providence, it's the same policies. It is the same. It's the AOC. It's actually socialism. And socialism doesn't work. But that is the model. That is the model that they want to work off, which is socialism. And it reaches a breaking point in what a place like New York City, and I don't know what's going to happen. That would destroy New York. It's sad. And I'm not saying all parts of it, but it would throw it off. I can tell you, people don't go to an area if they don't feel safe. That's one of the first things that kills. It crushes an area. It crushes a neighborhood. We've talked about if you have, there are so many people, and you could be one of them listening or watching right now. And people talk about when their apartment was broken into and then they moved. They couldn't live there anymore. And it was just so disarming and so disturbing. And so people can put up with a lot, but not crime. Not crime. And people vote with their feet. people people are saying, why would I live here when I could live in Florida? And tragically, Rhode Island and Massachusetts, it's this northeast corridor. We're all going down kind of the same rabbit hole of where it really is on our imagination. There's more progressives moving in, and people that don't want to be subjected to their form of government are moving out. And so right now, I don't know what's going to happen with, I mean, I don't think that this David Morales, I mean, I don't think he would be successful, but this situation with the mayor of New York, it's very, because hate to, can just, people would, but it's a terrible experiment to watch. Look at how, those policies have destroyed California. I used to love going to the West Coast. I still have friends in California. In California, they build housing for, they give them little houses for the homeless, for those who choose not to work. It's a failed policy. And you see different areas that are falling into it. Folks, this portion of our program, remember, if you have fire, damage, water damage, flood, mold, ServPro of Providence, maybe your basement gets flooded, ServPro of Providence, call them 401-941-5500. They're fast, they're thorough, they're professional. ServPro of Providence, 401-941-5500. 401-941-5500. ServPro of Providence. If you have a fire, not only are you going to have fire damage, you're going to have water damage, and you're going to have smoke damage. Call ServPro of Providence today, 401-941-5500. Tonight in the city of Providence, their city council, and the city council, you got to look at who runs that. Rachel Miller runs the city council in Providence, and they're going to have, there is the mayoral debate in New York City tonight. I know Curtis Sliwa. I'm going to go along with, it's very difficult. This guy Mondami needs to be in a head-to-head. I certainly hope he doesn't win. I don't know if Curtis can win. I mean, like everyone else, I'm not a fan of Cuomo, but that form of government, do we really want to experiment with the damage that guy could do to New York City is frightening. But I also want to, city council, oh no, that's not it. City council in Providence. Oh yeah, here it is. Tonight, Providence City Council will vote ordinance that would limit how police interact with officers from ICE. The full council will vote to change the Community Police Relations Act. The changes would broaden what counts as federal immigration enforcement, ban data sharing with ICE without a judge's warrant, create protected spaces. That is insanity to me. Folks, does that make sense? I'm just trying to be rational here. Where there is, and I mean it, that they're after many times someone who's wanted for murder. And the Providence City Council wants to set up, why should someone who's wanted for a very serious crime, why should they be allowed to hide in certain parts of the city? That makes no sense to me. The council staff said it would also allow civil rights groups to sue the city or its officers if police violate the ordinance. Councilors will consider a resolution calling on state courts to provide accommodations for remote hearings after reports of increased presence in and around the state. Mayor's office said there are some concerns the proposed changes could open the city to lawsuits. Of course, this is Channel 10. On Tuesday, an unmarked ICE SUV was involved in a crash on Chalkstone Avenue. God, the media makes such a big deal about that. But think about that. Providence City Council. So you have that Enrique Sanchez brother, Miguel Sanchez. He's one of them. You have that Rachel Miller. You have that Gonzalez. You have the Rojas or whatever. There's one of them. I contacted him about all the rats in Chad Brown. The guy, he doesn't do anything. Pride situation or have those people. Providence City Council, their Smiley is basically conservative compare. Yeah, can you imagine? Oh, I'm going to sue the police. Yeah, we're going to have the right that if we feel police are in any way helping ICE, we're going to sue the police. I'll tell you, it's frightening that this stuff is even discussed. And again, I am looking for someone to rally the troops. I would look for someone. When we talk about someone to emerge to run for governor, I'd like a discussion that we stop giving so much in aid to the city of Providence. Why? Why should we fund them? Why should we fund this sanctuary city with those, the whole scam of they need all the teachers, even though half of the students are illegal. So none of them are paying taxes. But you think about it, there's someone that's wanted for a serious crime, child molestation, homicide in a foreign country. They track the person and learn. They're hiding in Providence. And the Providence City Council wants to set it up that ICE could not go and get that person if they're in a certain place. Does that make that makes no logical sense? I find that, thank you, Donald. I find that actually embarrassing. I do. But that is the state that we're living in right now. And I'm waiting for someone to step forward to run for office that would rally people against it. Folks, I want to remind you about getting your garage epoxied with Corey at Quality Seal Coating, 401-283-9815, 401-283-9815 for quality asphalt seal coating. They epoxy garages and patios, decorative concrete flooring, sports courts, pickleball court, tennis, basketball. But get on the list now because they only do it for a certain period of time. It's Quality Seal Coating, 401-283-9815. They epoxy garages and patios. They do decorative concrete flooring, sport court, pickleball court, tennis court. Quality asphalt seal coating, 401-283-9815. Again, I'm not saying this to pick on, I'm not doing this to pick on the Rhode Island Republican Party. I'm not. But thank you, Jeff. But when does someone step up? Like, how far is this going to go? It is embarrassing. The media doesn't call them out on it, other than me. But so you have someone who's wanted for a crime in another country. They're not even supposed to be here. Many times, even after they're deported, like 2 of the 3 of that South American theft ring, they snuck back in. So why are they here? And why are you protecting to keep them here? And why should ICE not be allowed to do their job to remove them? You know why? It doesn't make sense because, of course, it doesn't make sense. It's illogical, let alone someone wanted for very, very serious crimes. But they would rather protect and keep them here than have them removed. If you're listening to the 2 o'clock news, if you're listening to the radio, stay tuned for the 2 o'clock news. Everyone else, we'll see you later tonight on Road Patrol Live.